Welcome back. Today we're talking about one of the most powerful tools in Python, functions. Now, a function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific task. So instead of writing the same instructions over and over, we define them once and call them whenever required. Now think about tracking your expenses. Every time you spend money, you follow the same steps. 1, you write down what you spent money on. 2, record the amount. And 3, update your total balance. Now, doing this manually every time is repetitive, and instead, wouldn't it just be easier to define the process once, and then you can use it whenever needed? That's exactly what functions allow us to do in Python. We can define a function that handles expense tracking, and whenever we want to log a new expense, we just use that function instead of repeating the same steps. You've actually already been using functions in Python. So every time you use the print statement or you use the input, that is a function, and those are built-in functions that are supplied by Python. But today we're going to step it up, and we're going to be creating our own functions. And this is a huge step in your code journey. All right, so how do you create a function in Python? So in Python, you create a function using the def keyword. And think of def as short for define or definition. And so here's the basic structure. Okay, I just created a multi-level comment, and here is the structure of a function. All right, so let me explain to you what's happening here. So we have def. Now, def signals to Python that you are actually about to define a function. So you always want to use this keyword when creating a function. And then you follow it by the function name. All right, so you want to make sure too, when you create the function name, that you choose a name that's meaningful so you know what it does. And then we have these parens, and right after that, we have the colon. Okay, so this colon tells Python that everything inside the function body, which is this indented block right here, we've seen this before, is the function definition. And so what that means is it contains the instructions that we will execute when the function is called. So basically when we use this function. Now, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a simple function to log a meal, which now we are getting started with our fitness tracker. So def log meal. All right, so I've created this function, and as you can see, it's following this structure right here. Now, to use this function, I'm going to call it by its name, followed by parentheses. So log meal, here's the name, followed by parentheses. And now if I run the program, Control R, we can see meal has been recorded. What happens when Python reaches this line? This is called calling a function. All right, so log meal, we're calling this function, and immediately what it's going to do is Python is going to look for the function definition that we've defined earlier, and here it is, log meal. And then it's going to execute all the instructions inside of the function body. And when it's done executing all the code, as you see, there's no more code, it then goes to the next line of code after the function call. So I'm going to run this again so we can see. All right, so Python went on down here, and it immediately went to this log meal, and it called this function, and it went up, looked at this definition for log meal, printed the meal has been recorded, and then once the function is done, it continues its execution after the function call, which is at line 10, and it goes to line 12. So line 10 is done, and it jumps to line 12. Now, instead of writing print, meal has been recorded every time, we can now use this function and call it as many times as needed. And so this makes our code cleaner, easier to use, and reduces repetition. So let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to go ahead and hit Command D to duplicate this. And this is calling the log meal function 3 times. So I'm going to hit Control R to run the program, and we can see meal has been recorded, meal has been recorded, meal has been recorded. So right now, our function always logs the same message. Now let's make this a little bit more useful by allowing input values. A parameter is a placeholder inside a function, and it allows us to pass different values into the function. And the actual values we provide when calling the function are called arguments. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this function to accept a meal name as an argument. So oftentimes we refer to arguments as inputs to a function because they are the data being passed into the function when it runs. But however, there is a different type of input which we had been using before, and that was the input function. But here when I say input, this is just referring to the values that are being passed into this function when we call it. So I'm going to modify this function logMeal to accept a meal name as an input. And then I'm going to go ahead and use meal in our function body. All right, so I have a print statement with an F string, you ate meal today. Okay, so now when we call this function, what we're going to do is we can pass different meal names as arguments. Okay, so I'm going to pass in oatmeal. All right, and then I'm also going to just call the function one more time, and I'm going to pass in tofu salad. All right, and so when I run this code, we can see you ate oatmeal today, you ate tofu salad today. So what's happening here? All right, so meal is the parameter that's inside the function, and it acts as a placeholder for the value that will be passed in. And then when we use the function, we call it, we invoke it, we pass in oatmeal as an argument. The arguments are the actual values that replace the parameter when the function is called. And so when the function runs, it inserts this argument into the function body and executes this print statement using that value. And so by making our function accept different inputs, we make it more flexible and reusable. Just see how easy it was to print out this you ate oatmeal today or you ate tofu salad today, just invoking logMeal. Okay, so we can also pass in variables instead of hard-coded values as we did here. Let me show you a quick example. This allows us to store data separately and use it flexibly in our function. So let me give you a quick example. I'm just going to get rid of this, and I'm going to paste some code down for you. Go ahead and pause it if you want to follow along and type this out. All right, so I've assigned smoothie to this variable breakfast, as well as rice and beans to this variable lunch. And then I am invoking the logMeal function. I'm calling the logMeal function and passing in breakfast and lunch. So let me go ahead and run this code. And you can see you ate smoothie today. That's not grammatically correct, but we're just going to leave it here. You get it. You ate rice and beans today. Honestly, the function doesn't care what the value is. It just takes the current value of the variable and uses it. Now that our function can log different meals, let's take it a step further. When tracking meals, we don't want to record what we ate. We also want to track calories and see how much we have left for the day. So when we write code, we often need to perform the same calculation multiple times. And functions, as you just saw, they allow us to package up these calculations so we can reuse them easily. But to do this, we need a function that doesn't just print information, but returns a value so that we can store it and use it in other calculations. So let's create a function that calculates remaining calories after a meal. All right, so here's our function. It's a function called remaining calories. So let me break down what's happening here. We defined our function with the def keyword and we gave it a name, remaining calories. And then we specify what information it needs. It needs two parameters. It needs daily limit and calories consumed. Now inside the function, we perform a calculation to find out how many calories are left. Now we have this new keyword, this special keyword called return. It's a return statement, and it sends the results back to be used elsewhere in our program. So let me show you how you can use this return value. So I'm going to paste this code down for us, and let's talk about what's going on here. So what's going on here? I've assigned two variables. We have a daily goal and eaten today. Okay, so what I've done here is When writing this calories remaining and assigning this function call, here's what happens. The computer is going to call our function, and it's going to pass in as arguments the values that we provided, daily goal and eaten today. And then this is going to immediately go look at that function definition for remaining calories, and it's going to calculate 2,000 minus 800, which equals 1,200. And so it's going to return the calories left, which is 1,200. And that return value now will be assigned to this variable calories remaining. And what's incredible then is that we are able now to use this calories remaining inside of this print function. So let me go ahead and run this code. And you can see you have 1,200 calories left for the day. Using return values give us three major advantages. Reusability, for one. We can use this calculated value multiple times without having to recalculate it. Flexibility. We can store this result, modify it further, and use it in other calculations. And flexibility. We can store this result, modify it further, and use it in other calculations. And number three, separation of concerns. Okay, so this is something that you hear a lot in programming, but the function focuses on calculating the value. And then while the other code, which we can see right here, just decides what to do with the value. So unlike print, which just displays the information and then it's gone, this return, it lets us capture and work with the value throughout the program. So let's move along and expand on our fitness tracker. Let's start categorizing meals. So right now our program tracks meals in calories, but it only tells us how many calories we have left. It doesn't give us any insight into whether a meal is high, moderate, or low in calories. So if we're tracking nutrition, it's not just about the numbers, but we also want to understand what the numbers mean. So let's add a function that analyzes the calorie count and then gives us useful feedback on each meal. And so to do this, we'll create a function that categorizes a meal based on its calorie amount. So I'm going to paste this code in so you guys don't have to see me struggling with the typing. Okay, cool. So I've defined a function called categorize meal. And you can see that it takes in two parameters, meal and calories. Now, inside the function body, you see that we have some conditionals. So we have an if statement that is checking, is calories greater than 600? And if it is, it's going to return this string statement. If this is false, then we're going to look at this else if condition. So if calories is greater than or equal to 300, then it's going to return this statement. Last but not least, if none of those conditions pass, we have our fallback, this else statement, which is going to return, hey, this meal is a low-calorie meal. So to use this function, what do we need to do? All right, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So to actually call this categorize meal function, I'm going to use a print statement. And I'm going to pass in the categorize meal, and I'm going to place, let's see, I'm going to give it an argument for meal as burger. And then I'm going to pass in from calories remaining, I'm going to pass in calories remaining. Alrighty. And so I'm going to go ahead and run this program. And so we see burger is a high calorie meal. So what's happening here? Okay. A few things are happening. Let's just like run through all the code. All right. So the first thing that's happening is we're going line by line. We're skipping here because this is we're commenting this out. And here we are, we have this log meal. So nothing is happening right here other than Python just storing this in memory, essentially. I'm just going to keep it pretty high level right now, but essentially it's storing it in memory, and then we can refer to it later. And then next, we are assigning smoothie to breakfast, and we're assigning rice and beans to lunch, these two variables. Now we are invoking this function log meal. And so it's going to go up and find that in memory, that definition of log meal, and it's going to run by passing in breakfast, which is here, into meal, and it's going to print this statement. And so we see this right here, you ate smoothie today. Next, we go to the next line, and we're invoking this log meal function again. So it's going to find that log meal definition in memory, and here we go. It's going to run that function body, printing it, and it is printing that lunch argument. All right, and so we could see it here. You ate rice and beans today. Now it's going to keep on going. The program is just going along, and it sees that there's this remaining calories function definition, so it's storing it in memory so it can be used again. And then it just continues going. And here we are. 2,000 is being assigned to the variable daily goal, and eaten today is 800. And now we're going to the next line, and we have this variable calories. And so we're calling the remaining calories function, passing in the arguments daily goal and eaten today. It's looking up that function definition, remaining calories, and so it is going to go inside of this function body. It's going to do some calculations using the arguments that were passed in, and so it's going to return this value. All right, and that value that is returned is going to be assigned to this calorie remaining, because we ultimately just assigned the return value from calling this function to this calories remaining variable. And then it's going to use this print statement. It's using this calorie remaining variable that was calculated from running this function, and it is printing it to this display. So you have 1,200 calories left for the day. All right, now we're moving on along with our program. All right, so we're defining this function categorized meal. It's being stored in memory, and here we go to this print statement. And so inside of this print statement, actually we are going to invoke that function categorized meal and pass in burger, and then pass in calories remaining. Okay, so we call this categorized meal. It's using burger as an argument, calories remaining as an argument, which is from here. And it's finding the categorized meal function. All right, the function definition is right here. And it's checking some things out here. It's checking these conditions in this function body. All right, calories remaining. If it's above 600, we're going to return this string statement. And it's going to be meal is a high calorie meal. And that's exactly what happened in this statement. It returned this, and so we can see burger is a high calorie meal because the result of this function call is being printed. That was a lot, and I kind of flew through that. I just wanted to show you the flow of our code. What we've been used to before is our code basically just running from top to bottom. And the same thing is happening here. So, but what is different is that we have these function definitions that are being stored in memory that aren't necessarily being acted on until we call and invoke these functions. So don't feel overwhelmed if that seemed overwhelming. You will get there. You'll be able to read code line by line like this. All right, so final thoughts. First of all, great job, okay? This was a huge step in learning how to code with Python. So the key takeaways here are what functions are and why they're useful, how to define and call functions using def, how to pass arguments to make functions more flexible, and then how to use return values from functions instead of just printing output. With these skills, you can write reusable code that eliminates repetition and makes your programs more efficient. So what's next? Well, right now our functions work very well on their own, but they don't interact much with each other. And so in our next lesson, we're going to be covering that. We're going to tackle topics like variable scope, and we'll also be continuing to expand our fitness tracker. All right, you guys. I hope you really just like pat yourself on the shoulder, because what you're learning right now is huge. So stay tuned. See you in the next lesson.